Thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really excited to be here and chat with you all today. My name is Meagan Lortie. I'm the Indigenous Relations Manager at the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada. I've been with the Institute since April 2019, actually, when I started as the Uncovering Common Ground project coordinator, which was the first project that really worked directly with Indigenous youth. It was a wild ride for a couple of years. There was a lot of learning and a lot of unlearning as an organization. It was the first non-Indigenous organization that I had worked for. There was also a lot of learning and unlearning for myself. And it was in a really interesting time of me reconnecting with my ancestors and my family, and sort of figuring out who I am as an Anishinaabe Kwe. So my father's family is from Serpent River First Nation, and my mom's family has come over from UK and Germany. And being with the Jane Goodall Institute and starting as the Uncovering Common Ground coordinator and moving into the Indigenous Relations Manager has been a really great opportunity to sort of connect my personal journey with the journey of the Institute. And I'm really excited to be where we are today. So a little bit about the Jane Goodall Institute before I get into roots and shoots. So our mission is really to create an informed and compassionate multitude for people who will build a better world for people, other animals, and our shared environment. And that's really based off of Dr. Goodall's ethos of every individual matters, every individual has a role to play, and every individual makes a difference. So JGI Canada was established in 1977, after Dr. Goodall has done a lot of her really, really incredible work globally. So as we know, there is no chimpanzees in Canada. So when I talk about the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada and how it started after Dr. Goodall, working with the chimpanzees and moving into sort of like an activist role of caring for chimpanzee habitats, there's been a lot of conversation of what is JGI Canada. And what we are two things is we are our Africa programs, which works along the chimscape in Africa, which is where chimps live. And in Canada, it's about connecting between animals, people, and the environment, which is the way Dr. Goodall talks about protecting chimp habitat. So in order to protect the chimps, we need to make sure that their habitat is looked after. In order to do that, we need to work with the people in the area to make sure that they have all of their needs so they're not impacting the habitat as well. So the way that we frame this is sort of at the center of the convergence of the three crises, which is climate change, biodiversity loss, and environmental inequity, or animals, people, and the environment. And I sort of change about how I talk about these three crises, depending on the age group I'm talking to. So if I'm working with younger kiddos, I usually talk about more specifically about animals, people, and the environment. But when I'm working with educators, or people that work with educators or older youth, I refer to it as biodiversity loss, climate change, and environmental inequity. And so at the center there, you see Indigenous perspectives and gender equity. So those are two of our main pillars about how we do the work. I'm also going to introduce in a moment a couple other of our foundations of the ways that we facilitate our work, which will lead into what we call this community-centered conservation, which is a lot of what Roots and Shoots is. So these three phrases are meaty. We could be here for hours and hours and hours to talk about each one individually, but I wanted to provide a little bit of a snapshot, and I'll share the presentation with Danielle afterwards, which has a little bit more information in the notes. But these are the three sort of how we do our work in Canada. So One Health, which is the center one, is an approach that recognizes that the health of people is so intricately tied with the health of the animals in the area and the environment. So this is not sort of a new concept. It is a newer term, and it was actually coined by the animal welfare world. But it's not a new concept. So this concept of Wakotowin sort of denotes that the interconnected nature of relationships and communities and natural systems is kinship, that the land, that the animals, and all of the people and beings in that area are kin. So by recognizing by recognizing you need to look after yourself, you need to look after your aunties and your kids and your moms and your dads, is the same of looking after the animals and the bugs and the water and the trees and the flora and the fauna in the area. So those three things together need to be looked after in order for optimal health for all beings. Next, we have ethical space, which is sort of a venue for collaboration. So it's a term coined by Elder Willie Ermine from Sturgeon Lake First Nation, and he's a philosopher, and he talks about creating a place for knowledge systems to interact with mutual respect, kindness, generosity, and other basic values, and that every knowledge system and person in that space is an equal. So it's also not specific to Indigenous and non-Indigenous worldviews. It can be intergenerational. It can be youth and elders. It can be youth and what we refer to as adult allies. But it's a space where you're coming into it as a person, and not a role or not your title. It's about connecting person to person in order to build those relationships in order to move forward. Another key piece is that there's no knowledge system needs the other to cooperate. So, for example, traditional stories that have been passed down for generations, stories that have been being told since time immemorial, don't need archaeological proof to prove those are correct. The understanding is that both knowledge systems are valid. The way I like to sort of like position it is this idea of a sacred circle. So when we talk about circles in a lot of Indigenous communities, is this idea of sacred circle. When you enter into the sacred circle, you're agreeing on some protocols. You're agreeing to enter into a space of shared understanding. You're agreeing to come in with an open mind. You're agreeing to come in with respect and kindness and love and bravery, but you're also acknowledging that nobody else is more important, more valuable than you or each other in that space. So I like to sort of associate ethical space with the idea of being in circle, and that space is so important if you want to do any work, like coming in together to building those relationships in a good way before anything ever happens. So we call that sort of like the pre-phase dialogue phase, and there's no end to this phase as well. This is something that you're going to want to continually do. So the last phase, which is a little bit more common, last phrase in term, which is a little bit more common, is called two-eyed seeing or Etowamtamunk. So this term was coined by Elder Albert Marshall, who's Mi'kmaq, and it was developed in the early 2000s. And it refers to seeing from two eyes. So one eye is the Indigenous eye and using the strengths and the gifts and the Indigenous ways of knowing and being. And then the other is the Western eye. So using the strengths and the knowledges of Western science. So I think of it like microbiology or something like that. So by using both eyes, using the strengths of the Indigenous worldviews and the knowledge that that they've had and been using since time immemorial, and using sort of modern Western science like microbiology to move forward in a good way to address these climate concerns. So the way that we action these terms is called community-centered conservation, which refers to conservation approach where local communities actively lead and participate in the protection of their land and their biodiversity and natural resources in that area. So they're involved in the planning process, they're involved in identifying what the challenges are, they're involved in the actions of addressing those, and they're the ones who decide what the solution is. From our perspective as JGI Canada, our role is very much to be who they need us to be in this space. So whether it's about being a bridge, which we often call ourselves as a connector, whether it's to resource other people in the spaces, different experts, if it's about strengthening capacity, or if it's about just being another person body there to support. But the community-centered conservation is how we do our work in Africa, but also in Canada. So in Canada, how we action this is our roots and shoots 4 steps. So it's going to be a little bit simplified because this model has been so great in working with kiddos in preschool all the way up to youth working in colleges and universities. We have a couple roots and shoots groups in like Guelph and U of T. I think in McGill. And these 4 steps are a framework for how to engage young people in climate action. So the first step being engage and inspire. The second step being observe, which is community mapping, which we'll talk about in a bit. The third step of taking action, which is really the doing of the stuff. And the fourth step, which is I say one of the most important steps, is the celebrating. So celebrating the impact and celebrating the really, really rad young people that are doing the cool stuff. So getting inspired and engaged. So because we are the Jane Goodall Institute, we love to talk about our founder, Dr. Goodall. She's done some really great stuff. So at the young age of 26, she went over to Gombe National Park, what's now known as, to start to study chimpanzees. She worked with the incredible anthropologist Louis Leakey, and also brought the discovery of chimps using tools to Western world. And then we get this term that's called, this is where we get the quote that says, now we must redefine tool, redefine man, or accept chimpanzees as human. So bringing this discovery over to the Western world, thank you, it was groundbreaking. And being a young white woman going over to Africa at the time was not really heard of. And also being a woman in science and not having any formal education, she did a lot of groundbreaking. I also want to preface this before I move forward that the idea of chimps using tools was most likely known by the local communities who have been interacting with these chimps forever. But Dr. Goodall bringing that over to Western world, it was the discovery that helps people understand the relationship between animals and humans more, but also start to understand animals as being more than just driven by survival and yeah, their instincts, and that they are able to do tools and they are able to have families. Um, Sidebar, being at the Jane Goodall Institute, I've learned so much more about chimpanzees. My background is in social work. And it's so wild how closely their social habits mirror ours, that it's been so interesting to learn. And no wonder Dr. Goodall is so passionate and has been able to um, work with so many people about, protecting them and looking after chimpanzees in Africa. That's sidebar. I just participated in a presentation. So at JGI Canada, what really drives us is our Youth Advisory Council. We're really, really passionate about them. There's a couple of really rad young people on the screen here. We have Kyla and Meryl. So our Youth Advisory Council is made up of 12 to 13 young people from all across Canada with all different backgrounds, and they help advise our Roots and Shoots program and also the Jane Goodall Institute as a whole. They also do their own projects every year. So this year they're doing a campaign around Indigenous protected and conserved areas. So just connecting with different IPCAs and trying to bring more attention to them, and also doing a bio blitz. They created a really, really cool bio blitz guide, which is on our website. Which I'll link afterwards, for educators who are looking to do that in their classroom, or if you just want to participate, they have a campaign out on their social media as well. When we're doing the Roots and Shoots 4 steps, and if you're going to be doing this with students, or if you're going to be doing it sort of like maybe a train the trainer style, I really encourage you to ask the question, who inspires you and who do you know is making a difference? And it can be anyone from, we have Greta, who's doing some really, really great advocacy work, and I think showing that youth voices are heard. Or it can be local heroes, so people in your community who have done really, really great stuff. It can be people in your school. You can get the kids. We often hear their aunt. I hear a lot of kids talk about their aunt or their uncle or their grandma, their grandpa. So just start to get them thinking about who inspires them and why, and how they want to start to mirror those characteristics in what they do. So step 2 is observing the needs of your community, which is the community mapping. So for community mapping, you can do it in multiple ways. My favorite way is to be outside. I think that's the best way to make observations. It's just nice to shift in atmosphere, but it's also just nice being in nature. And when I'll be talking about your community a lot, community, you'll hear it. And it can be whatever the youth have decided. And that's a conversation you can have before you even leave the classroom is, when we want to go out and map our community, what do you feel our community is? Is it our school community? Is it a walk around the school and a walk around the schoolyard? Is it the neighborhood? Do we want to walk around the neighborhood, see what's around there? Or is it the city or town or community or nation that you're living in? So getting the students or the youth to define what the community is before you even set foot or start your community mapping is a really great exercise, because it helps build that sense of ownership. They're like, this is my community and I help determine that. So after you've decided what your community is, go outside or go for a walk, or even if it's around the school, I really encourage that. I know it's a little bit difficult to finagle some, especially little kiddos sometimes. So if you don't have that capacity, I have some other ideas here. So we've used Google Maps, where we sort of zoom in and zoom out and use satellite images and just drop pins of things that we've noticed, either on our walk back and forth to school. Or we have a group of youth in Tanzania on the bottom here, where they sort of did they mapped out their village, and they used different things that they found in that area to draw the village. So their leaves were homes and rocks were different things. So whatever you want to do and you want to do with the youth to map your community, I really encourage. Again, my favorite part is getting outside. So if you're outside, I really encourage you to talk to the youth about what they're observing. What I have learned is they're way better at noticing things than we are. It's new to them. They're more attuned to what's going on, and we sort of get sort of like in our blinders back and forth when we're walking to whatever the destination is. And I find that like they're much more better at identifying what is in the area. And I also encourage you to start talking to them about how these communities, the animal community, the people community, and the environmental community are connecting. So we have a couple ways to do this. I'll show you two different like what are the, forms, like resources or tools we have. So this one is more so about identifying the different communities and their needs. So identifying the people community, which are people, what are they doing? The animal community, what kind of animals do you see? Do you see any animals? Do you see a specific animal? And then the environment, what does it look like? Is there green space? Is there garbage? Is there a lot of pollution? Is there a lot of trees? This is also an opportunity to talk about native species versus invasive species. On the last in-person community mapping walk I did, is they just learned about invasive species. So they were like on it, like they were like, it's invasive and that's native and that's invasive. So that was really, really cool. And they were excited to sort of like see that along their walk. One of the youth that I last year that I remember to this day very vividly is something that they saw was roadkill, and they were so quick to identify that there was a new area being built, so that animal was displaced from their home, and then because the people have to drive to wherever they get to, because there's not a lot of stores in the area, there's not public transit, that they had to drive, and that animal got hit because their home was displaced. So they were so quickly able to identify that those are the way those three communities interact. And it was just jarring for me to hear them talk about roadkill when we're talking about other things at the moment. So I think that's just a really great example of how youth are interesting and surprising, but I also think really good at identifying these three communities that are interconnecting. This is another version of the form you can use, more of a Venn diagram. This one focuses more on how the different communities are interconnecting and interacting, and less about sort of what their needs are. So I would just encourage you to choose whatever you feel more aligned with, what you are more confident in using, what you think your students or the youth you're working with would enjoy more. But either one works, and it will sort of lead to the same results. So the QR code is there if you want to have access to those two forms. But just a summary, so community mapping, strongly encourage you to get outside if you can. Use those resources, sort of talk about and identify how those different communities are interacting. What issues or challenges are you seeing? Are their needs being met? Why or why not? And then after all of that, you're able to bring them, I encourage you to bring them back together to talk about what they've identified. So what is a problem that they've identified? So as a group or as a class or individuals, however you'd like to do it, is try to get them to identify one challenge that they've identified. So for the sake of today, let's talk about they saw a lot of litter, like in their community, they've identified a lot of litter. So if that is the challenge, try to get the group to come up with a couple different versions of actions, and you can encourage them to think about. So is it about maybe more information about the impacts of litter? Is it about maybe having more visible garbage and recycling bins? Is it about just having compost available? Is it about animals getting into people's garbages? So just sort of get them to think about what those challenges are and what some solutions are. And then finally, as a group, try to identify one of those solutions to tackle. I know that can be a challenge, especially if you're working with 10 to 30 students. So here are some suggestions that have worked for us, which is dotmocracy. So you put them up on a board or around the classroom, and then the students get a sticker or a pen or a marker, and they put a dot to which one they like the most. You can do blind voting, hands up if you like it. Spectrum line. So if you have two that they're really excited about and you just can't make a decision, I just get them to stand at either end of the classroom. This end is about more information about how to store your garbage so animals don't get in it. And this one's about a garbage community cleanup or something like that. And then you can do fist to 5. It's my least favorite because it involves the most math. But so your least favorite, you'd vote 0, and the most favorite, you vote 5, and then you just tally the points up. So those are some suggestions if you need help on deciding on a project. So finally, it comes to deciding on your project. So once you've chosen you've identified the challenge you're looking to address, you've chosen an action you want to take. I want you to get them to start thinking about how they're going to accomplish this. So who's 3 people that they can ask for help? Is it a parent? Is it an expert? Is it the principal? Do they need to reach out to the municipality? Where can they find more information on this? So an opportunity to do research. Maybe it's even about bringing in a local knowledge keeper or elder to talk about the area or the land or who's been here. Maybe it's about learning a little more about the original peoples of that land. And then three things you need for that project. So if it's about awareness, maybe it's you need a computer to build some posters, or maybe you need some markers to build some posters. You need a printer to print some flyers, or maybe you are doing more of like a video. So you need some video or video creating content. Then to sort of get them into the project mindset, how long do they think it'll take to start and complete the project? And what is the goal they'd like to achieve? What is the result that they're hoping for? So in summary, they've identified the problem. They want to know who or what is impacted. They've identified the solution. They've identified what they need to do the solution and how they will know they'll be successful if they've achieved their result. So finally, not finally. We're actually moving into the taking action of the project, which is very much of the doing. So this is often broken down into four different versions of it. So we have the restore, which is about being on the land. That's sort of like the hands in dirt action. So it's about garbage cleanup, if we're going with that one. Maybe it's about removing invasive species. Maybe it's about planting native species, or maybe it's about creating a pollinator garden. There's educate, so that's sort of like a campaign about raising awareness on a certain topic. So maybe it's about storing your garbage properly. Motivate it, it's about rallying people around a cause you're trying to address. And then finally advocate, which is, it often involves like reaching out to either like an admin team, a principal or vice principal, a municipality, a premier, that kind of thing. It's just more about like the getting different levels of authorities or the government on your side. So in order to help you with some of these, or if you're looking for different ways to engage your students in these conversations, we have some resources available on our website. There's a BioBlitz guide, which I've talked to you about before. We also have some really great guides about like honeybees and polar bears, which some of our friends at JGI Global have created. We also have some really awesome resources our Youth Advisory Council have created on there as well. And it's linked. A lot of these are linked in the presentation. Finally, sometimes a resource that you need for a project is money. So at JGI, we have what we call the Animal, People, and Environment, or APE Fund. So it's a $1,000 microgrant you can apply for. It opens in September, runs until the end of May. And it's to support these youth-led environmental action projects. So if you have working with a group of students or a group of youth that want to do a Roots and Shoots project, and a lot of things cost money, and you're going to need some funds in order to do it, I encourage you to apply to the APE fund. More than one teacher at a school can apply. I also want to say that too. So the school doesn't have to apply. I really encourage sort of like a group lead or a teacher or an educator to apply for a classroom. And there is opportunities to work together with other classrooms if you wanted to collaborate with other groups. If you want more information about APE fund, we have a web page, but also my information at the end. We can chat about it. So really quickly, just a couple of examples of projects. We have the New Chalmouth Youth Warriors. So they created 3 flower beds in each of their villages to just have some accessible plant medicine and plant their sacred medicines. So they're northern BC, so they don't always have the land in order to plant these, and they're not always readily accessible, and you can't buy them because they're so remote. So one of the youth wanted to have 1 flower bed in each of the villages so they have access to those traditional medicines. Another one is Thrifty Thursday, which was a free shopping event for students and families using donated items. So it was really cool. They set it up like a boutique, but they also had like flyers and pamphlets and posters about the impacts of fast fashion and the inequity that comes with sort of like the fashion world. So it's a really great opportunity for people to like shop boutique style, but also learn a little bit on the way. We also have a lot of pollinator gardens. We got a lot of people do community cleanups or sort of greening some outdoor spaces. So if there is a space in your yard or around your school that you're like, hey, this would be a really great spot for an outdoor classroom, is we have some educators do that as well. So finally, celebrating your impact, which Dr. Goodall talks about as one of the most important steps. If you have not seen Reservation Dogs, I highly encourage it. It is hilarious. And this is just a little gift from that. But it's a time to celebrate. It's a time to celebrate you. It's a time to celebrate the youth that were doing their really, really great work. It's a time to celebrate the people who supported it, who participated, but it's also a time to check in. It's a time to identify, were we successful with the project? What could we have done better? What really worked for us? Is there something we do different in the future? And just an opportunity to like check in and celebrate the really great work that was done. We also do some mapping at JGI Canada. So we, for our Roots and Shoots and Ape Fund projects, we have a map on our website which sort of shows all the different Ape Fund and Roots and Shoots projects across Canada, just so people can see what other projects and Roots and Shoots groups are doing. And then finally, because we are part of a global community, we have our Roots and Shoots global map or our tapestry of hope. So if you click on the link, it'll show all different Roots and Shoots and JGI projects that are happening globally. Just a really quick summary. So step 1 is engage and inspire. Step 2 is observe. So community mapping. Step 3 is take action. Step 4 is celebrating your impact. And that is it for me. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. I'm Céliane Trudel. Today I'm gonna present to you this webinar about stepping into nature-based learning. So Danielle asked me to sort of put up together a presentation about what is nature-based learning, sort of what are the steps to get in there, the simple logistics, so you can really have sort of a picture of what it is. So I'm going to also give, I'll show you my plan. So I'll present myself first. So I'm a speech language pathologist, but also a nature-based educational consultant, or I call myself land-based educational consultant when I work in EUHT, where is the main place I work right now. So EUHT is the territory that's in mm, the mid-yellow section that you see. It's quite a big territory. There are 9 communities, and I live in Val-David, so an hour away from Montreal. So I have to travel when I go in all of the 9 communities. It's a very beautiful territory, and the Cree people are amazingly funny and fun to work with. So I have my training as a speech language pathologist, but also I have specialized graduate diplomas in nature and adventure-based interventions that I did in Chicoutimi. Um, and this is after that I started working as a land-based educational consultant. And it's because the year before I worked in the UHC Bay James for a year, and I was the very serious speech language pathologist there for the first year. I was supposed to start the services, but whenever I was in the schools, I thought, oh my gosh, like these kids needs to be more in contact with nature. I felt so much better because I was more in contact with natures when I was living there. So that's why I went to take this course, and then I came back as a consultant to start a project, which is still ongoing, and it's even now a permanent team, and they're gonna hire new employees. So like it's growing. It's a very beautiful project that we're doing over there. So I've been coaching teachers to engage in land-based educations. I'm not the one bringing the cultural knowledge, of course. We always invite knowledge keepers and elders in our outings with the teachers. And I work with Cree colleagues as well. So my work is more like to bridge with the Western way, like Meagan was talking about the two-eyed seeing. So I'm sort of the Western eye, and my colleagues are the Indigenous eye, the Cree eyes, and we work very well together. um, yeah, so that's me. Today's plan. So as I was saying, I'm going to try to give you a big overview of what is nature-based learning. So we're going to define it. I'm going to talk about the benefits because there's so many. And then we're going to discuss a little bit about developing a school mindset. That's so important, I feel, for the success of that. I'm going to talk a little bit about logistics, not too much in details, but just so you have a picture of what it takes to implement nature-based education. And then I'm going to give you some examples so you can sort of picture what it looks like. Different ways, actually, because there's so many ways. But first, I'd like you to remember a time when you felt connected to nature. And I put this painting there that I did because it's inspired from a memory with my dad. So I grew up in Quebec City, so it was not a lot of nature where, like in Limoilou, there was a lot of building and you know. But there was this little woody area close to my dad's house and apartment, and then we would go there. And I remember there was this old oak, and I don't know if it was dead or what, but there was a big hole in the middle, and we could sort of snuggle inside. And I remember my dad would say, "Oh, like we have to make a wish, and you can take it, you can tell your secrets about to the oak." And so it was always very special when we went there, and that's very the first time when I felt connected to nature. So I don't know if some of you want to share your memory of when you felt connected.
I can say something.
Yes.
So I'm originally from Vancouver Island and I teach in Quebec now. But my school on Vancouver Island was right beside the ocean. So we had this little loop that we would take the kids through and we would do daily physical activity, which is not a thing in Quebec. So just having more outdoor time and like exploring just the shore was a really nice time, like as an educator. And even for me as an adult, I felt it really added to our school day. So that's missing for me here in Quebec.
Yeah. Oh, I
Yeah.
bet. Thank you for sharing that.
I can say
Uh,
something too if you,
Yes.
because our school basically we're right on the river. We even we when we rebuilt the school, we bought an access across the road. So a lot of our teachers, there's at least one period a day is on the beach. Because it can go to science, art, nature. It's we're really trying to push the outside learning concept. Um, but of course, to do all that and build and everything, it takes money, but hopefully we'll get there.
Thank you. Robin, go
I
ahead.
yeah, when I went to Southeast Asia, I was always around the beach. So like just being on in the sand, in the water, like being part of something that was like where you don't see the other side, it was just really grounding. Even like by the mountains too, in like Banff and Jasper, like feeling very small and something being a part of something so much bigger than you was just like it hit differently, you know?
Mm,
So yeah, those are some really important moments for me.
thank you. Anyone else wants to share? Okay. I love when we think about how we connect with nature because it's so important, and just thinking about it, I already feel better myself. So I don't know how you felt thinking of your nature memory, but it can bring up so much well-being just to think about it. So we're gonna start by defining nature-based learning. This picture was in I think it was in Uji-Bugumu where the water is right behind the school. So we just had to go out, walk 2 minutes across the baseball field, and then we were in this little nature spot right by the water. So we did a couple of nature journaling sessions with the students, and they were all in their own little spot quietly journaling. That was a very special moment. So defining nature-based learning. Danielle asked me to try to capture a couple words for you. And I made this tree. It's not scientific. It's not a graph that I took somewhere. I just made it because there's so much overlapping between all the words. And I remember during my course at university, my one of my teacher was really passionate about the terminology. So he made like a page. I think that was 100 words about outdoor education and all the derivatives. So there is a lot of terminology and it really varies. So I think this tree sort of captures some of the important words that you might encounter. So there's outdoor learning, which is really wide, and it includes the outdoor classrooms, for example, if you go outside. It also includes, so all of the other words are connected to outdoor learnings too, right? Because some of it or most of it happen outside too. But outdoor learning is not necessarily confined confined to nature. So it could be anywhere that's outdoor, right? Nature-based learning is a little bit more specific about the connection with nature. So there has to be some kind of nature. It doesn't have to be like a big woods area. It can be just like little plants that grows in the cracks of the sidewalks or little birds that chirp in, but nature is there. Adventure-based learning is really rooted more in the risk-taking and sort of the challenge to step out of your comfort zone to learn and grow. So usually these adventure-based learning opportunities are more towards developing leadership skills or autonomy skills or like personal development sort of. Then there's the ecological environmental learning, which is really the focus is to learn about the environment, the ecology, and become more environmental stewards. They can happen in nature, they can happen indoors, it can happen sort of in different places. Place-based learning, this is more like Meagan was talking about. When you're mapping the community, you can go in different community areas that are important. And so you learn about the different places in your community that are important. So it could be in nature, but it also could be in a museum or in some kind of community organization that's very important. And then land-based learning, it has the Indigenous perspective at the heart of the learning. So it can happen in nature. A lot of it happens in nature, but there's also the traditional dwellings, and you can also do sort of land-based learning, but also indoors because you're working on, I don't know, storytelling or more traditional crafts or stuff like that. But if I would like to sort of define nature-based learning, I would say it happens mostly in nature. I mean, you can bring some of it indoors, right? You can bring the nature indoors if you want, but really it's mostly rooted in nature. A lot of it is experiential or hands-on learning. And that's true for all these, actually. A lot of these are mostly experiential and hands-on learning. It often includes inquiry learning too. It's often led by students' interest. So it's you really follow your students' interest to create your lessons, to create the learning, or to help them grow in what they want to learn. It's holistic, so it's I mean, even if you try to do learning about something specific, there's always going to be other curriculum goals like from other subject matters that will be included, and it also includes all aspects of development and health as well. And I find it's often naturally inclusive, although adaptations may be needed, and I'll have a slide about it later. But that would be my definition of nature-based learning. I mean, you can find a lot of different definitions, but I think this captures really what it is. I added a little slide on risky play because you might learn about that. I didn't know exactly where to put it in there because I feel it's sort of part of everything in there. So risky play is defined by the thrilling and exciting forms of free play that involves uncertainty of outcome and a possibility of physical injury. Risk is not danger, right? Like it's not about danger. It's more like you know this little guy we were in, where was it? Wominji, I think. And so he was climbing the street, which is not very high. There was snow on the ground. There was always an adult, and we would like make sure that, oh, like, are you holding yourself with all three limbs at once on the tree to make sure you don't fall? Are you feeling safe? And so children would just climb, sorry, English is my second language. They would climb only to the height that they felt comfortable, and then they would come back. There was a lot of helping too. Some would get scared in the middle, so the other kids would help them go down. But that's risky play. So yes, of course, like he could have fell and badly and injured himself, but it is recommended by the Canadian Pediatric Society because it does promote a healthy development. And it does teach a lot the children about how to take the responsibility of their own safety. So it's really, really important for their own development. These are the benefits of nature-based learning. I mean, there's so many benefits. You can see here at the bottom of the image, better social skills. I see that all the time when we go outside. Suddenly, the students interact so well together. Some teachers tell me afterwards, these students never talk to each other. You know, they're part of different teams, but suddenly they work together when we're going on the land. Pro-environmental behaviors. Oh, and I want to read that quote in the graphs of the picture. Time in nature during childhood and role models who care for nature are the two biggest factors that contribute to environmental stewardship in adulthood. So that's very powerful. To bring our kids outside. Enhance health. And I'm actually reading this book, The Nature Fix, sorry, by Florence Williams. And she talks about all the health benefits, like the physiological effects of just being in nature, like the smells, the scents, the just like the eyesight being able to rest and the brain rests and the cortisol level goes down, and so all kinds of physiological benefits just by being in nature. You don't have to do anything else than look at nature or be in nature. Increased self-esteem. I've seen that so many times. I remember a young boy, he was labeled as having oppositional difficulties at school. He was just integrating a new school, and so the principal asked us, oh, do you want to bring him outside during your activity? We just want to make sure he has a positive experience when he comes in. So we do that, and then on the land, like I did not see this kid as having any oppositional behavior. He was just thriving in there. He knew a lot from his grandfather, so he became a positive leader. He started showing all the other kids how to set a snare and how, like, where to put it, because he would see the tracks. He was a very positive leader on the land. So because he felt he was not labeled, he didn't feel trapped. He didn't feel trapped in these labels. And so he could show a different side of who he was. Improved grades. So that has been reported many, many times in many different researches in the scientific literature. Student success is much higher when they're in contact with nature, and stronger emotional connections to people in nature. And that's, I mean, for me, that's the key of life, right? When you feel connected to the people around you, to the nature around you, you feel automatically better. So I feel it's a great gift to give our students when we do that. I just put a couple other benefits that I observed as a speech language pathologist. The language quality and quantity when we go on the land. Oh my gosh, it's so much so different for the little ones in all the languages. They feel more free to use all the languages so in multilingual context, that's very beneficial. I've seen some teenagers, like hoodies on, arms crossed in the classroom, and then you go outside, suddenly they start sharing stories, they talk. And even in one school in February, one of the teacher told me, you know what? It's the first time I hear one of my students' voice this year. They had like intervention plans about it. They had multiple meetings with the parents, with the student. It was a high school student. And then she said on the land, he was just talking like a bird. So that's how powerful it can be for some students. Improved behavior, that's like I've seen it. Well, I mean, I always see the good behaviors, but the teachers report how the students are much more well behaved when we go on the land. Improved attention, improved cognitive skills. And I have this little thing about executive functions. Studies have demonstrated that the best approaches to improving executive functions are those that engage children's passionate interests with joy and pride. So nature can really easily do that. Address stresses in children's life. So even if you just go outside in nature, your stress levels go down. So that's another plus for nature. Encourage children to vigorously exercise. And as like just to go outside, you need to walk, and a lot of students will start to run just naturally because they feel more free. So just going in nature, it automatically does that. Giving children a sense of belonging and of social acceptance, we already discussed that, and give children opportunities to repeatedly practice executive functions at progressively more advanced levels. And I really feel that nature does that. When you go, I mean, when you do nature-based learning, what I've seen is people work at their own level. So, for example, a month ago, I was in what was it, Mysticiny. We had a group of grade 1 and grade 6. We did the same activity together with them, but they all worked at their level. They all learned what they needed to learn. So it's really, people will learn at the level they need to, and they can always go further. I put this here because I think it's really important to reflect on how some of our students, they don't have a lot of access to nature. Maybe their families are not comfortable to go outside. Some children are not allowed to go play outside because parents are scared of what might happen. And some people are really connected to their video games, and they don't learn how to play differently. And I mean, play is so important for all the cognitive functions. Well, in speech language pathology, that's all we do. Like people who've been through speech language pathology as children, they always say, "Oh, I think I've seen a speech language pathologist, but we just played all the time." So play is really powerful. It's really how we learn. It's how we build the connections in our brains. And if they don't learn how to play, then they're missing a big part of their brain development. So it's really, really important, and showing them how to engage with nature, how to play in nature can be really transformative for some of our students. Okay, developing the school mindset. This was really nice also. It was the same in Ujibugumi again, by the water journaling. These were high school students, very engaged in their journaling. Oh, and that's the breakout room activity that we wanted to do.
This is really great. I love it. I was intrigued when I think you had it a few slides back where it had all the benefits.
Yep.
The two that stood out, yes, that one, thank you. So the two that stood out for me was the better social skills and the increased self-esteem. So like, I wanted to know how that would look like. Like how does it increase or improve social skills?
Well, I mean, there's so much collaboration when you go on the land. It always depends on what you do too, but I feel like just like I've seen some students with mobility issues that had difficulty walking in unleveled ground. So naturally, all the other students who would maybe pick on that student usually, uh, in nature, they would just help them. It would
Okay.
just become natural collaboration. I don't know why it does that, but it's really, but there's so much collaboration also. And you can also decide to focus on having, like, if that's one of your goal that you want to work on, you can decide to pick some activities that promote collaboration. And so you can even discuss after the activity how was it to collaborate together. Like there's so many kinds of of activities that you could do that are targeted to social skills if you want. But I feel like from what I've seen on the land, naturally students are, maybe because they're calmer, they feel more free too. So there's like less stress and need.
Weight on their shoulder.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know, like I don't know how it
Okay.
happens, but it does happen.
Good to know, just so I know when I speak to like my principal or something, or if I
Yeah.
speak to someone else of like, I can justify that point, right?
Yeah,
And then
and
my
for the
next,
self-esteem, what I
yeah,
found is the more you know about nature, the more you know about, like, even like if you decide to teach survival skills, oh my gosh, like students, they suddenly feel empowered. Like I remember a group of high school students that we brought out, and they were just like this, they didn't want to participate. And we were like,
they're
oh
too
my
cool,
gosh, like
they're too cool for school.
too cool for school.
Yeah.
I was like, oh shoot, okay, like, but then we decided to go on with the activity. So we said, okay, well, you have to sort of build a survival shelter with what's around you. We provided ropes and tarps as well, and we had them build like very small fires that they had to light with an adult. But just to So we told them, like, imagine you have to sleep there and you have to survive till tomorrow. And so like they started like, yeah, whatever. But then they started to think, oh my gosh, like we will never survive here. And
Yeah.
started to get engaged in the activity. And at the end, because we have elders, like the elder went around each shelter and discussed like, oh, well, like how you put your wall there, the wind is gonna come in, so you're gonna freeze all night. So if next time you put your wall, you make sure you put it like against the wind direction, you're gonna be warmer. So all little tips like that. But that could be done also as a learning, like after each group, you go with all the groups and students brainstorm why this shelter would be a good shelter or not, and it would bring a lot of, and then you can research it. But just knowing how to do things, it's really enhanced the self-esteem.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. So I've stepped in one of the discussion room. It was really interesting. I would like us to take a moment to share what you think the biggest challenges are. Maybe if you could share 1 to 3 challenges each team.
I'll go for my group.
Yep.
So we were 3. Um, so it was more the having being able to build a shelter in the schoolyard, having some form of shelter, because I guess the space is very limited for the whole school. And with that, it was common for all of us for like the resources and funding for it. Sometimes the grants are very, very specific that it's only for, planting trees or building a garden or, along those lines. So trying to find something that can be fitted for a classroom, even though it's not planting a tree or not building a garden. The other one was trying to fit, because there was also a teacher in our group, and trying to fit in like outdoor, like having an outdoor class in her curriculum of science and mathematics, I believe. So how to it has to fit some kind, because teachers do have a curriculum to follow and certain points to grade, to look at for with the students. So trying, because outdoor education is cross-curricular, but it's more the nitty-gritty of, okay, how can I make it mathematical, or how can I make it scientific, or to reach those criterias. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, these are challenges that are often encountered. Thank you. Another team would like to share their top 3 challenges? Yes.
I can share for my team. So we have a variety of different roles in the school. I shared about elementary school because I teach third grade. And although we do have the space, we have a beautiful outdoor classroom and huge field, like really nice, lots of trees. But our challenge in elementary school is like the fear, or a lot of educators, a lot of teachers feel that kids will just be wild and there's not engagement or learning that goes on, but it's not necessarily the case. So kind of like shifting the mindset, I think, is a big challenge. We have a principal who's open to, or I do, who's open to outdoor learning and like gave us that outdoor classroom. So I think the fear for me or my school team is like, how do we keep, like Robin mentioned, how do we like apply our curriculum, and how do we get data or like evaluations from what we're doing? So making the learning meaningful. Just the how, like as educators, because we don't have a lot of training for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
So one of our worries was the period lengths. So in high school, oftentimes it's only 1 hour, and a lot of the groups kind of shift between teachers, and the students won't necessarily have the same teachers for the next period. So it can be hard to find time for more than 1 hour outside. And if you're in the city, it can be hard to find a place that you can get to in a reasonable amount of time to do a lesson or something like that. And then there was the whole safety concerns, finding enough people to accompany you, and also what to do if something happens. Yeah.
Yes, these are excellent fears and challenges. Thank you.
That for me is my biggest one, because I do take them outside a lot, but sometimes I stop because my biggest problem is my own lack of knowledge.
Yes.
Because in class, that's okay because the resources are there. We have a question, we have dictionaries, encyclopedia, reference book, Google if everything else fail. But once I'm out there, they ask me a question, I don't know. So that is something that I need to overcome to become better at that. And if you could address that, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, I do like a lot of knowledge. But you know what? Learning along with the students is sometimes the best way. But we're gonna talk about it. If I don't talk enough about it, we can discuss it at the end, okay? Sorry, I want to see you. So now you see my screen? Perfect. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So I was giving this workshop from the perspective that I was talking to community development agents, but I feel it's the same. I mean, even as a teacher or as a school administrator, you could take that role of trying to support developing the school's mindset, because the more people buy in that approach, the less you will feel alone and the more you will feel comfortable taking your students on the land if you're a teacher, or supporting your teachers if you're school administrators. So yeah, bringing everyone together is really one of the key to success. Like I've seen some schools I visited, the admins were not that much on board, and it does make a huge difference in how the teachers feel comfortable taking their students outside. Sometimes the administrators are really on board, but then the teachers are really reluctant. So it really, like, when everyone is on board, it's something magical happens, and then you can really everyone can thrive in this approach, I feel. So I've sorted out a little bit of like the roles that are important, because some administrators don't know how they can support their school. So I thought maybe like if you can bring some of them, some of the, the list, and tell them, well, these are some things you could do to help support the teachers or support a nature-based learning approach in the school. So first off is talking about it, encouraging it. Sarah was talking about how her principal created a beautiful space just to teach outdoors in her school. So that's one way, like it's really saying like, you know, I believe in it, so go. That's a really good way. Sometimes organizing schedules that support nature-based learning. So for example, in the high school, I know it can be a very, one of the barrier is that the periods are not long enough. So sometimes the school administrators can help in developing schedules that fits. Like if you know next year you want to go, maybe the schedule can be arranged that you have double periods on some days. So you can go, for example, once a cycle outside with a double period. Having prep time also for the teachers also help, or having committees that are formed just for land-based, that teachers can discuss different things that they need, or yeah. Finding a budget for extra winter or rain clothes for students. I know in the schools where I work, a lot of students are not properly dressed when we go outside. So having a bank of clothes, it could be clothes that are bought, but it could also be like a clothing drive with extra clothes that are organized in a room for people to borrow. Finding a budget for nature learning kits, materials, or equipments that are needed. Ensuring that we have appropriate insurance as well, so people feel comfortable. Like in the school, admins needs to feel comfortable that they are insured when their classes go outside. And one of the big one is also having permissions for the parents in the schools where I work anyway. So sometimes when the teachers know that they're going to go, for example, once a cycle every Friday afternoon, or, you know, like then you can have yearly permission forms. So parents are informed where the students are, and they know that every day 6 in the afternoon, they're going to be at this outdoor location, if that's possible. This is a picture of some nature journaling bags that we made. So it's already prepped bags that we created with, you know, a pencil case with different writing tools, glue, a little mini measuring tape, a magnifier, some little tweezers, a clipboard, and a little sit pad that, yeah, so these are easy for teachers to borrow. So this is one thing that admins can, you know, support, like finding budget for that, and then someone can put them together. Supporting teachers, engaging and informing all stakeholders, all the community members, the parents, the students, like about the benefits, the why we do that. Yeah, informing everyone is really, really important. Making the permission process easier. I know some in one school, it's really difficult to get permissions for parents, like they don't send back the papers. So there was an admin, how do you call this, like a secretary who was in the morning of, she was calling all the ones that didn't have permission, and was getting verbal consent. So that was a solution that was found at that school to make the permission process easier. Yeah, providing, as I said, ready-to-use materials or kits to borrow, or extra clothing. And providing list of resources, like community experts that could come and visit, and like help with the lack of knowledge. If you are lacking knowledge, you could invite community experts, maybe local historians, naturalists, biologists, artists, environmentalists, who come and speak at your to your classroom when you're on the land. Maybe like there could be some collaborations with universities if you live in the city. Also provide a list of professional development opportunities for teachers and some nature-based learning lesson plans. I do have a list, well, of some of the resources available, because there's a lot available online if you search, but I do have a list at the end. So I'm just going to jump in logistics because I feel these are includes a lot of the barriers that you've stated, actually, and that we can address beforehand. Oops. Sorry. Okay. So safety. Safety is a big one. Abigail, you talked about it. So from what I've experienced, students are usually not reckless. I mean, if you have students who do have special needs and difficulties with impulsivity, that could be a difficulty. And I mean, you would need support for that student specifically. But really, from what I've observed, like sometimes I've entered schools, okay? They never see me. I entered a school and then students are all over the place. People are yelling at them, like they're not listening. So I get scared, right? Oh my gosh, we're going on the land with them. And that year we were taking like a huge amount of groups outside. I think sometimes at one point we were like 100 students at together at once. They were like for free exploration and sort of inquiry-based learning, but really free exploration, free learning. With their teachers, of course, and extra adults. But we were going in a bushy area. The only thing we did was marked the boundaries with tape, you know, like orange tape that you mark, like for when you mark a path in the bush. So anyone could have crossed these boundaries if they wanted to. But they didn't. They just respected the boundaries. They really well behaved in the bushy area. And you know, like we had people like adults sort of observing all the areas, but sometimes students were sort of alone, not quite alone, but they could have done things, but I mean, they usually are so curious and so engaged that they feel free, so they don't feel the need to break any rules is my experience. But I mean, I feel it's good to identify visual boundaries. Like so orange tape can be an idea, but it can also be like existing boundaries. So if you are in a park, well, they can't go past the, I don't know, the sidewalk, that particular slide, or you know, like you can create boundaries from what exists around you, as long as they're clear for everyone. I think that having a few rules is better than having too many. So usually when I go out, we have 4 rules. We state them in a positive manner so students know what to do, how to behave, rather than just not like knowing what not to do. So it's like you always need to see an adult. You can't go too far that you can't see an adult. You always, if we call you, like we have a signal, for example, it could be a how do you call it, whistle. It could be just like an animal, a sound that you make. If you have a drum, you could use a drum, whatever you have, but as long as the signal is clear, when we call you out, you come back. Then the third rule is be mindful of your own safety. So make sure you always being safe. So it always makes them responsible. And rather than saying like, you know, don't climb too high, we say things like, are you sure you're being safe? So it gives them back the responsibility of their own safety when we do that. And they don't feel like we're telling them, don't do this, don't do this. So they feel more responsible and yeah, they usually respect that. And the last one is we are a caretaker of the lands, so we don't litter, right? So make sure you take care of the land. So these are my 4 rules, and usually students really respect them, and I feel it covers all the principal areas that needs to be covered. Yes, I wrote also ask students if they're being safe instead of always telling them what not to do. And that's a big one because we always say no so many times. And so they feel stressed out. Like imagine you're doing things and you're being said like, no, don't do that. No, don't do that. No, that it's stressful for myself. So I can't imagine how it is for students being told no all day long. Make sure you dress for the weather. I put this in the safety section because it is about safety, right? Like if you're gonna have frostbites or hypothermia because you're all wet and cold, it's not safe. So make sure you model how to dress well for your students. I've seen a lot of teachers come on the land with, like, no mittens in a very cold day in the winter. That's, it's not a good modeling. So if you model it, and you can always also make it a teaching for your students. It's a really good life skills to have, how to dress for different kinds of weather. Like, for example, I put mosquito repellent or nets in the summer. So there's, like, we always think of dressing for the cold weathers, but also there's the rain and there's the hot days also. Like, what do you wear when it's so hot? Make sure you have a hat so you don't get heat stroke. Those are all very good learning to actually teach about. And then learn about risky play. There's a lot of different videos that you can watch online to learn more about risky play. It's I talked a little bit about it earlier, but I feel it's a really good knowledge to have if you're gonna engage in nature-based education. Sorry. I put a little one in winter because I feel a lot of teachers have told me, "Oh, I can't go outside, it's too cold." And look at this picture. I don't know, it's a little bit blurry, but you can see my phone. It says -31, feels like -41. We were in Wiscagonish, it was February. Of course, we didn't do like half an hour outings outside with the students. We didn't want them to have frostbites. We did like tiny little chunks of 10 minutes, but at least they got the air, they got the movement. And then we had access to traditional shelters, so that's where we warmed up. But you could just, take a puff of air, like let them take out their energy and come in very quickly. It doesn't have to be very long to have some of the benefits of outdoor. I'm just gonna finish that slide and I'm gonna let you speak, Sarah. So of course, wear proper clothes, include warming breaks, find or install wind barriers like tarps, or if you have like a wall that shields you from the wind somewhere in the schoolyard, that's where you can go. Of course, move. And teaching how to behave, how to make sure you stay warm in the winter is very good teaching again for the students. And of course, for you as a teacher, take small steps. So if you don't feel comfortable in the cold winter, don't start with a very long outing the first time with your students. Just, start with a short one, try it out, and then you see how you feel. If you felt cold, like discuss it with your students. Oh, I'm afraid of getting cold, and that's how I'm gonna dress. And then when you come back, maybe you discuss like, were you cold? I think I was too hot because I dressed too warm. And so like I should have dressed in layers, and you discuss about it, and then you all learn together about how to be comfortable in winter. Yes, Sarah.
I was just going to say snowshoeing. Well, we got our principal to get a class set of snowshoes, and then it ties into social studies because our program, we're talking about Indigenous people and, the Iroquois, how they got around in winter. So we went snowshoeing, and it was pretty fun. So snowshoes, get your principal to buy snowshoes.
We did snowshoes with a lot of our students too, and sometimes we get to have the traditional ones because we're in the communities and some schools have them, and they're really hard to walk with. So at the same time, they learn like about the different kind of workout if you want. But also we talked about because it's their history too, right? How their ancestors would walk for, I don't know, like 30 more kilometers every day, and they had to, when they arrived, set a whole new camp with what was around them, and hunt, and so it was quite a different way of life back then. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, this is a quote that is very popular in outdoor intervention in general. There is no bad weather, only bad clothing. Materials. So some of the barriers also that teachers encounter is like, I feel I don't have the right materials to go out on the land. So maybe it would be nice for your school to develop a list of shared equipment that people could borrow. For example, when we do bring nature journal bags in the communities, but we bring only 60 per school. So the teachers can borrow them, but they have to, take them back. So the whole school can benefit from these materials. Of course, it requires a storage space for that and a system to make sure everybody brings that back. But so like here's some examples, nature journaling bags or kits like I've showed you before. It could be also nature exploring kits with more like binoculars, nature guides for insects, plants, and animals, little containers to collect samples, things like that, science and math, like measuring tape, water analysis kits, containers, for sample collections. It could be also books about nature. Maybe your librarian can have a section about, storybooks on nature that you could borrow and bring out, or field guides. And then just basic outdoor gear. So tarps and ropes are always very useful. Sit pads, clipboards. If you want to make hot chocolate outside, maybe a camping portable stove and cookware. If you're going much further, maybe you need a portable toilet, but that's more for advanced advanced outings, I would say. But these are things that you can actually buy for your school and share, for the whole staff to share. Now we talked about the outdoor classroom. I think Robin mentioned it, like how your school, you would like to have an outdoor classroom. So what is an outdoor classroom? So I put a different types of pictures from the internet, because where I go, we don't have infrastructures. We just go in nature areas, and that's like my favorite. I think outdoor classroom that you can have is just having a natural area. It doesn't have to be big. In some schools, in some communities, they don't have big areas, but it's like a small patch of a woody area very close to the school, so it's easy to get to. And just being in between trees, it can feel like you're in a different world suddenly. But I did put some examples of things that can be done. I think some of the positives are that some teachers feel more comfortable going in and out in the classroom, but just outside, so they just can bring their lesson out that they would do in their regular classroom. But I also feel it can be limiting. If you limit yourself to these kinds of spaces, you can miss a whole side of nature-based learning, because you're just going to reproduce what you do in the classroom. Whereas when you engage in nature-based learning in an unstructured area, students feel more free. And you have more hands-on learning, more experiential learning. It's more grounded into like the feelings of what students experience. So I feel it makes the learning more powerful, but that's my personal opinion, I guess. But you have some schools, instead of having like infrastructures for a classroom with with a board and chairs and stuff like that, they have a garden where the students go to learn about gardening plants and stuff like that. So it's a different structure, I guess, of a classroom. But it doesn't have to be complicated. Like just those picnic tables can be enough if you need to write outside, or it. Like I feel the outdoor classroom is a nice addition to the school, but it's not necessary to engage in nature-based education. Don't let this limit you if you don't have one. And I would say also nature is everywhere. So this is just the front of my house, and look at that big icicle. you've got there. And my friend's children came up this winter and they saw it, and oh my gosh, it started a whole learning inquiry, and we were not even in school, right? It's just because of that big icicle. Like we talked about the cycle of the water, how did it go in this shape? How come is it like it seems like it grew from the up and then down? So how come it has this shape? And so it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have like there's water, there's an icicle, it's science, it's nature. You have it all there, yeah. So what I always tell the teachers also when I go visit in the communities, like, yes, it's nice if you have a camp, but you need to take the bus, and it's a very nice area. We have a traditional camp. We have a lot of wooden space, but it doesn't have to be that. And even I prefer the spaces that are smaller, less naturey, but closer to the school, because then you can go more often. And I feel like going more often, the regularity is helping a lot in how students engage too, because they understand the value of the learnings. They know the rules, so they know how to behave. They know the place also, so they know the boundaries better. So if you always go to the same place that it's really close to the school, even if it's not like a wood space, or like maybe it's a simple park, but there's grass, there's insects, there's there's nature, there's a tree, so I think like closer to the school is better, even if it's not the ideal location that you would have in mind, and in urban areas. So that's why I wanted to show you just the front of my house. This can be really close to the school. Also, one of the challenges that some teachers can encounter is inclusivity. So some students have mobility issues or have different types of difficulties. I find that when we go on the land, it's naturally inclusive for the students who have learning difficulties. But also you can have some adaptations. Some students do need to have a visual schedule, and if you go like in a new place, especially for the first time, some students are more anxious. They need to sort of understand what's the schedule. So I just put a piece of paper and a plastified sheet, and then you bring an erasable marker. You can write your schedule. It doesn't have to be pretty, as long as the students understand what's on there. And as a speech language pathologist, I use this strategy very often, and it's really helpful for some of our students. Of course, finding a location that students with physical limitations can access. So maybe it's a shorter walking distance, and it's not, very far, because you can access it with a wheelchair, but at least they can go. And I think that's a big gift that we make them when we bring them with us rather than leaving them in the classroom. I don't think it's a good choice. So better to choose a location that's maybe not your ideal, but everyone can go. Carry the communication devices of your students if they have some. And of course, if you have students that do require assistance, bring the educators with you or an extra adult. Maybe the parents would like to come too, or the grandparents. Yes. In the safety, I feel I forgot to talk about the extra adults, because that can be a big challenge. I think talking to your school about having someone, like Danielle was sharing during the break, someone who's dedicated to help to support nature-based education, of course, would help if you have someone. Sometimes teachers go to classrooms together, so they are two adults. Like if you are two adults, one adult can deal with any emergency situation, and the other one can take the group back, if something happens. If you're alone, that's not as safe as I feel. Sometimes just having community member with you, or a parent or family member that would like to accompany the students also is a great solution. Yeah, but grouping, my colleague actually used to be a kindergarten teacher, and I think they would be 3 or 4 kindergarten classrooms who would go out for the whole day outside uh, learning. But I don't think they had extra adults, but they were 4 teachers because they were 4 groups. So and it allowed them also to make different learning stations. I think they were kindergarten, so maybe they had a gross motor learning area, a reading area, free exploration, like things like that. Yes, I'm reading my list to make sure I addressed all the fears, and the other fears are more about the teacher's fears of not linking the curriculum. So I think we can address them in these little examples that I'm going to give. So these are just different, I didn't want to share specific lesson plans or stuff like that, but I want to give you different ways that it can be done, okay? So this is a picture of a little girl. She was like pretend, I think she was in kindergarten. She was pretend building a fire on the beach. So she first made the circle with the rocks, and then she gathered the little woods, and then the elder was there to help her know like what the safety around the fire, and yeah, and which kind of wood to use. Oh yes. Before we jump in the examples, I would like you to look at this picture and let me know, what do you see and what do you think happened? Bird seeds, maybe. So we were in a bushy area. There were no bird feeders. There was like this little tree with a low branch. And these, I think, were like sort of, they looked like, they looked like pine cones that were taken apart. Something snack, yes. What kind of animal could, eat those things? And I guess sit on that branch. I guess it sat on that branch and then dropped all their garbage on the floor, on the ground. Bird or squirrel, yeah. Yeah, my guess is it's probably a squirrel, huh? You know how they like gather all their food and then they sit and they just eat and they make a mess. Yeah, that's my also. So a lot of that was a walk that we did with the students, and a lot of students would just walk by without noticing it, and when I pointed it out, they got really excited about it because it's something that they usually would not have noticed. Um, yeah, so I would like you to reflect and share. So did it spark your curiosity? How did you feel like trying to solve that mystery? Uh, which cognitive skills you think were involved? How can this type of inquiry benefit students?
I liked the way you prompted us, and I just couldn't help but think like one of my students would be like, "That's poop," or something like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a fun way to kind of look at your surroundings in a different lens and like, okay, but why? So thanks.
Yeah, prompting curiosity is very powerful. I know of I don't know if you ever heard of John Young. He started a whole coyote program that he calls, and it's all about like creating the connections to natures with the youth. And he just shares stories about like to prompt curiosity. So something happened to him or he saw something, and then he shares it, and then he lets the youth explores, and he doesn't even give answers. He let them search for the answers. He doesn't even give them the answers. So like he does, well, he's very knowledgeable, but I mean, you wouldn't have to be knowledgeable taking this approach, because you would sort of teach students how to search for the answers they're looking for. So you would be learning along the students in that type of inquiry learning. Yeah, I love these things. And this, this is just a squirrel, but so you could see that in any city space. So yeah, one of the approach you might take is just taking the class outside. So any lesson plan, like here, I think this was École Saint-François Xavier in Rivière-du-Loup. So she just like, I think, have a couple words. Maybe she wants them to write sentences with these words. I'm not sure what the assignment was. I took that from the internet because I never do the classroom outdoor. But I think it's an approach that can be done. And I think for some teacher, it might be their very first step because they don't feel comfortable otherwise, like taking a different pedagogical approach. But they take their own pedagogical approach and take it outside. And of course, some students might be distracted by the birds and by the squirrels. You can make it a teachable moment if that happens. But I think the more you do it, the more students will know what to expect and how they will learn how to, focus on the work. And that's, it's not a time for going to play, but it's a time to learn. So, I find it's a good step. I think for me, in my opinion, it should be a complement to other nature-based learning ways. So for example, you go explore something around, like there's bushes and grass around, so they could explore something about the worms or the insects or the plants that are around, and then you come back to sort of journal or write or do. Maybe it's a sentence activity that you do about those things that they observed. So maybe you do the pedagogical activity that you plan, but it's linked to what they saw, right? But you're still outside. So I think it's, I mean, use it if that's the only thing you're gonna do. Use that, but I feel it should be a complement rather than limiting you to that. Outdoor reading. So as a speech language pathology, I see a lot of students struggle with reading and writing. And I feel like, having a space outdoors to read, like how good does it feel to take a book and read outside? It really can bring back the love of reading for some students. Let them choose their reading materials. What I like is often like do a shelter building activity before, so they can let out their energy, and then they can read in their shelter so it feels more cozy. You don't have to do that. Also, it could be like at the bottom, at the foot of a tree to read. They choose their own tree, and that's where they read. And it can always be the same tree if you go like for reading periods, always regularly. You can bring blankets and sit pads to make it very comfortable. Having a hot drink, like a hot chocolate, might be fun too if they bring their own, reusable cups and they bring it outside. And if they don't know how to read yet, for the little ones, you could bring a storybook outside and do interactive readings with them outside. It's always really fun too. And if it's about nature, then maybe you can, relate what they see in the book to what they see outside. Outdoor writing too, I feel like it's a great way to promote the love of writing. It can really foster deep focus and inspiration. And you can decide to, if you're working on narrative text or informative or procedural, you could make it relating to the nature around you, or it could be about something that you're learning in class too. But they just do the writing outside. So same as with the reading. it's just a different way to do it. And if you want to really explore other things, you can, choose, try to find different things that you can write with from nature, or make your inks from natures, and then they use a paintbrush to use the inks and write in their, in their paper. So that for students who have difficulty with writing, maybe that could bring some motivation to write words or vocabulary. So you could also decide to take a lesson plan that's for outdoor learning or nature-based learning. These are often structured, like this one. See, like I took this on the Toronto Outdoor Education Schools. So you see the time that's required, the materials you need, the curriculum expectations, learning goals, and then like there's a description of the activity. There's even a success criteria. So these are very well made. I think I put the link of, they have a bunch of lesson plans for outdoor education. So I put the link in at the end of the things. But there's a lot of things that you, like if you have a specific theme in mind, you can Google like outdoor learning activity for blah, 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 and then you can find a lot of different activities. And like we were talking about the sometimes having difficulty to let go of control. So for teachers, so that's one way to sort of keep the control, at least at first when you start having more structured activities, can really be comforting for some teachers. Yeah, lesson plans. Then you could do walks, wander walks, or just observing. These are, oh, this place was in Mistissini, a little bushy area right behind the school, and we saw so many animals. That was the first time we saw so many animals. We even saw like 2 different hares and a ptarmigan, and we saw bird nests and a tree full of woodpecker holes. It was really fun. But anyway, this was in a natural area, but it also works well in the city areas. You could just decide to focus on different things, like you focus on your hearing sense or your sight or your smell even, and then maybe you journal about it when you're back in class or you have a discussion about it. And there's the whole book called The Walking Curriculum. It's really well done, and I believe it's adaptable to many grade levels. But maybe there's anyway, you can Google it. You see, it's very interesting, all the activities that she proposed in that book. But just taking walks is so good, and this is just on my street. Actually, there was this I saw this squirrel. Like observing squirrel is so interesting for students. I know sometimes it can feel a little bit boring for us, but when we really start observing their behavior, what they're doing, it becomes really interesting. And then I saw these, I think that's a gros bec, I don't know in English, the yellow bird, and a woodpecker also. Yeah, we're just walking on the street and we saw these. So it's really easy to, and it could be sparrows too. They're really interesting to watch their behaviors, how they sing, try to recognize they make different calls. And so you can also try to register the different calls that they make. How do you write it? Do you remember in writing what a songbird sounds like? So that could be a challenge that you offer your students. Like, do you use a musical writing? Anyway, that's a good challenge for students to try to think how to note different bird calls, and then talk about bird language. Inquiry learning, I love this process. But then you have to let go a little bit of control. And you don't have to have all the knowledge when you do inquiry learning. It's really about teaching students how to learn. So, like, I mean, here I brought a tree identification key that we had, a plant, sorry, we had a plants identification key. So we were running around and trying to find these plants. These were local plants. And then the kids would learn their names in Cree and in English. And then you can, have them research them later on. You can even bring back some samples in class and then research them, or you can have them journal about, that's my next slide, journal about them and draw them, all the details, really observe, and then bring back their journals, and then they can research it. Nature journaling is a great tool for inquiry learning. They can really learn how to, like, all the details they need to note, the descriptive language they need to note to remember what they see and then be able to research it. So it's really about detailed observation. It's really cross-curricular. We can also bring poetry in there, feelings. You can have a writing prompt about what's around them. And usually when I teach about nature journaling, I try to tell teachers, like, don't correct, like, don't put red marker on their journal pages. You can put post-its or stuff like that. Like, if you want them to know that a vocabulary, the right spelling of a word, like post-its or things like that, or make a list of the vocabulary you want them to learn how to spell, but just don't mark the red on it. So they really, it's really a tool for them to learn. And it's my personal favorite. I love it. Yeah, so here's a list. I'm gonna let you go through that. This is just a list of different lesson plans or resources where you can find workshop recordings or information about outdoor learning, or books on how to make curriculum connections. And there's a lot of resources. There's much more. I just listed some that I found really interesting. I put 2 in French too, because I found it so interesting, in case some of you are doing French as a second language. There's some lesson plans as well.